Hello. Our names are Guus, Daan, Ede,
Julia, Rebecca.
and we are the media group. Throughout this week, we have written reports on daily basis, and we have also taken pictures of the week. And we put them on the website behind me. We've also made a video about to introduce all of the groups, and we would like to show you that one right now.
Mr. Mishigoy. He's an expert in the history of the 20th century and the 21st century. He was an old student from this school, and now he's collecting military equipment since the age of 18. In the interview, we asked him some questions about the World War I and his weapon collection. Now we'd like to invite Mr. Mishigoy to ask him some questions.
Hello everybody.
You are still young. Why do you find history, in our case World War I, still interesting?
Well, probably because of the fact that studying history would sometimes help to prevent the atrocities that happen over and over again. If you know the saying that practice makes perfect, well, humanity is practicing for thousands and thousands of years, and we're repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And my biggest wish is to pass the lessons from history to our future generations, to help them so they could probably make a better job than we did in the past.
There aren't many people who would collect weapons. Where did you find the inspiration for this?
Well, I think that every historian or collector finds himself a field of his profession, and he specializes in that field. And I think you must probably have it in your blood to find something like that interesting. And I don't only find weapons interesting from the historical level, but also from the technical point of view, how they work. And of course, there is also a bit of passion behind it, and the whole story, how they were used in such tragedies, and they all have, each one of them has a special story behind it from the people that were using it and doing terrible things with them.
There have always been wars since the starting of the war. In many cases, political problems that have been solved through a dialogue instead of discussing or even war. Do you think we can learn anything from history?
Well, there there's a great quote from a very bad movie called Fury, and the quote goes that ideals are peaceful, but history is violent. And I couldn't agree more. Many times wars happen just because of no great reason, and we could prevent them, but I think that we are not doing a very good job on war prevention. For example, right after the First World War, we founded the League of Nations, and its only job was to prevent another war. And we see that not much further than 20 years later, another great war happened. And after the Second World War, we founded the United Nations. And even the United Nations aren't doing a really good job on war preventing. After the Second World War, we said never again. And things happened again and again, even in the Europe. If you remember the Balkan Wars and the war in Ukraine right now, which is basically a country, or maybe let's say two countries away from Europe. And we're not learning, and we're not doing our best to prevent them again.
Okay, so many people died in World War I, and even more people felt Europe suffered in some way because of that war. Do you think the casualties from World War I can happen again?
Just like I said before, United Nations and all other superpowers aren't doing a really good job on war preventing. The main reason is they just don't have enough power to prevent them. And yes, I think that they could definitely happen over and over again, because if you can imagine, right before the Second World War, nobody thought that war will actually happen. And even in our case, in Slovenian War of Independence, in the year of '89, nobody could imagine that a war will happen only 2 years later. And after that, the Balkan Wars. Nobody was thinking that in a country that was actually so connected, such a great tragedy could happen again. And the same thing goes now for the war in Ukraine, or wars in the Middle East, or wars in Africa. So yeah, definitely, I think that we are not doing a really good job on preventing them, and we should work further in that way.
Our conclusion is that we have learned this week much about World War I, and that it claimed many lives. Other people were injured, and even more people lost their fathers, sons, or husbands, or suffered in other ways. Therefore, it is important to learn ourselves and future generations about the history of wars. Certainly, nobody wants to experience like this, and hopefully we will not repeat the same mistakes. Thank you, Mr. Michigoy, and thank you for your listening.
So, hello everyone. We are the poetry group. This is Anne, Theo, Dennis, Jasper, and I'm Dan. And we made a poem. Enjoy.
Trench I sit, and iron hails above. Exhausted, no food, no water, waiting for the end to come.
An enemy is under, in my trench he sits. He's speaking up his soul, fearing for when his end shall come.
I just want to go home. In my trench he sits. The enemy is in the trench.
He looks into my eyes, scared. In my head, the fallen man floating down the river. Some ours, some theirs, both silent in the depths. They didn't shoot. They didn't look. They didn't do anything. We didn't shoot. We didn't look. We didn't do anything. I was scared.
But I still the story stayed in mind. The story full of horror. The story ending cold. Should I shoot? Should I kill? Why?
He is but another me, just in a different uniform, fearing the same things. That's harrowing.
Bullets fly across the field, but they weren't theirs. Someone screamed. He's hit. He's gone. He knew his end was about to come.
So we're the stop motion team.
So, before we start, I will just tell you something about what is stop motion. It's a filming technique where you take a couple of pictures in a row and place them together to form a jiggly effect. In the little animation on my left, it's about 1 second. We use more than 10 pictures to create. In our entire film, which is about 1.5 minutes, we used just shy of 1,000 pictures to create a small film.
Before we could take the pictures, we had to cut out these little figures. They were it took a hard time took a long time to cut them out, but finally we got this result. There are green soldiers, crosses, tanks, and even explosions that formed the movie.
We also used modeling clay to form letters and words. We put our camera on a tripod so the final product will be steady and not shaky.
So we merged all the pictures together in a movie, and we gathered all the sound effects and put them together in a stop motion film.
So now we will show you our final product. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy your evening.
Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about propaganda posters. So we made these propaganda posters in 2 different styles with the same message. Our message is that going to war is not worth it if you look at the goals that they are trying to reach and the amount of human lives lost. Flor and I made this poster, and Anna and Ayla made that poster, and we are going to tell you about the style, and we're going to compare them with the posters quickly.
So as you can probably imagine, those posters like this, they were hanging on the buildings or they were in the news. So those posters make people confident about war and just fighting for the freedom of their countries. So we took this poster, the left poster, as our idea to create this one. We just changed it into peace propaganda. So basically, the style of this poster, we decided that we want to go for like boring, realistic, and just serious poster with boring colors and just super realistic soldier and title.
So, as you can see, the main difference between our poster and the propaganda behind us is that we just changed the title because in those days, in the middle of World War I, the poster were inviting people to the war. But actually we didn't consider the painting for our main, but we just focused on a title and the message that is given to us.
And here we have a very modern poster, as you can see. We use bright colors, so the message will really come over. And as you can see, it's like in a cartoon style, and that makes it really modern. And also because it's modern, it will probably be spread by social media, because nowadays people don't hang posters anymore around the street, so they put it on social media.
Okay, so comparing the propaganda poster behind me and the propaganda poster we made, the two main similarities are both posters have very bright colors. This is to attract people's attention and to make them very outstanding. And they both have a cartoon style, which is very modern. The main differences are that our poster has more text to make the message come across more clear, and this poster that we made is to stimulate peace, and the poster behind me is to stimulate war. So in the end, we came to the conclusion that if you lost a soldier in a war, you actually lose a war, because people are really, really important in today's world. So actually, the war doesn't bring anything good. It brings only the bad things like mental health illness and illness on the basic level. So our slogan is make peace, not war, because it's not worth it. Hello everyone, we are the Jenga Masters. I'm Elise, this is Iris, Mikush, Elisa, and Dana. We prepared a board game which tests your knowledge about World War I. It is called Knowledge is Power, the World War I edition. First we will explain the rules and we will tell you how it works, and after that we will demonstrate the game using groups and you guys have to answer the questions.
So as you can see, our board game is based on Jenga. And what you do is you pull a block out of the tower and you have to make sure that the tower doesn't collapse. The red blocks mark the easy questions and the blue ones mark the difficult questions.
So for the rules, we decided that if you get the red blocks correct, you get +1 point. And if you get the answer wrong, you get -2 points. When you answer the blue questions correctly, you get +2 points. and when you answer them wrong, you get -1 point. If you don't know the answer, you can either ask the audience or your teammates. The person or team who has the most points is the winner and gets the game. Everything starts with 5 points.
Okay, so now we're going to play the game, and we divided all the students in 10 groups, and we will ask the questions, and they have 15 seconds to answer them and come up with their final answer.
The groups are just as you see, one row, one group, okay?
Number 13. How many men from around the world joined up to fight?
So I'm gonna choose a random team and the game leader to answer me.
Oh, look! Enthusiastic people in the
Oh,
back.
I choose Saladin. Saladin.
65 million.
You got the point.
Oh, that's great! Number 3. With what animal did they symbolize Russia?
An Everett.
That's correct! Okay. In which industry did they invest the most money? Okay.
Yes, please. A guy from the group, please. Thanks. Aber.
Germany.
Yes. Germany. Okay. What tactics did the Italians use on Mount Sabaton? Oh, that's art. Art.
Yes, one topic.
That's incorrect. -1.
Okay, Maris.
Throwing stones at the...
Okay, point for originality, 1 point.
Yes.
Yeah. Soldiers suffered not only from physical damage, but also from psychological damage. What was the most common psychiatric illness called?
PTSD.
What did they call it? PTSD?
Shell shock.
Yes,
Shell shock.
that's correct. Okay. How many battles were there on the Isonzo front?
Please, Bibi. Stop.
12.
12 is correct. Okay, the last question. After the war, the leaders of the countries agreed on the truce. What was the name for this peace treaty?
Yeah, I chose you that.
It's wrong. Does anyone else know?
Pedia.
Yes, it's correct. Okay, drama won the game. The drama queens. You won the game. show you how the conditions change from World War I and how the nature and the infrastructure improved. So in this exhibition we will compare 2 photos each time. At the first photo you see 5 soldiers. We assume that they were from a higher rank because we saw the stripes on their arms. The next photo is our group, and it consists of I'm Kaya, I'm Pien, I'm Flora, and Nate is on there too, but he is ill.
So the left photo shows a French soldier from World War I. It's visible that the uniform consists of very colorful and distinctive pieces because it didn't change from Napoleon days. But in World War I, people realized that brownish colors are more practical than rectangular attire, and they changed it. They also added a helmet and a waterproof vest for safety. Now the soldiers wear a uniform in camouflage colors, which is a lot safer for them.
The bridge in the pictures was built in 1905. It connected the Middle Europe and the Mediterranean area. The first picture shows the Socan Bridge torn down because it was detonated in 1916. For a period of time, there was only steel construction. It was rebuilt 11 years later, and it still stands in the same form today. It is known as the bridge with the largest stone arch in the world.
On the left, we see trenches. Trenches were firstly introduced in World War I. It was horrible there. There were several diseases. For example, trench feet. That meant that there was water in the trenches, which entered their boots, and that's why the blood couldn't flow to their feet anymore. And if it was very severe, they would amputate their legs. Another disease is trench fever. It was transported by lice, and it was very deadly. A lot of people died from the disease. And last but not least, we have the disease called shell shock, which is a mental disease, and it was caused by hearing all the bombs falling down and the bullets. Today it's known as PTSD. Oh, wait. And on the right side you see the trenches now. They attract a lot of tourists, and it's part of the Slovenian heritage.
These pictures show Mount Sabatin. On the left you see the mountain completely destroyed with no vegetation at all. That was a consequence of the Zonso front, which also took place on the Sabatin. There were trenches and cavernas digged into the mountain, and also bombs destroying the surface. However, in the right photo, the current situation, it is full of greenery which has grown over the course of 100 years. This is a good example of that the war not only affects people, but also the nature.
The picture on the left, you see people from the army who had to climb to be safe and to get to another place and attack our enemies. On the right, you can see a group of people who's also climbing, and they do it just for fun, and they don't have to climb if they don't want to.
In conclusion, we can be very thankful that we live in such a good condition, that there is peace and we don't have to deal with war. We think that people should visit the historical sites more often to look into the past and learn from it.
Thank you for listening.
Hello everybody, my name is Aber.
I'm David. I'm Rock. And I'm Marek.
And we are the Smoke Bomb Ninjas. We are going to tell you something about chemistry in the First World War, especially the poisonous gases. At first we are going to tell you something about the different types of poisonous gases, and after that we will show you a movie in which we will make our own smoke bombs.
We are going to talk about the deadly gases used during World War I in chronological order. First, we will talk about tear gases, then we will talk about chlorine gases, then the phosgene and diphosgene gases, and lastly, the mustard gases. We will talk about their look, their smell, and their effects on humans.
Tear gases are colorless light yellow liquids with fruity odors. They irritate mucous membranes in eyes, mouth, throat, and legs. They can also cause temporary blindness. They are not deadly, so there are no fatal casualties.
Chlorine gas has a yellow-green color and it smells like bleach. Chlorine reacts with the water in your lungs, forming hydrochloric acid. So the effects are coughing, vomiting, and irritation to the eyes. They can also cause suffocation and lead to death.
Phosgene and diphosgene gases. Phosgene gases are colorless and they have a glassy odor. Diphosgene gases are also colorless, but they are more oily. If you inhale those gases, it will cause irritating throat, irritating eyes, and you will eventually die.
Mustard gases is colorless and odorless liquid. It can damage the eyes, legs, and cause chemical burns on contact with skin.
We, Smoke Bomb Ninjas, made a movie for you where we test our smoke bomb.
Please don't try this at home.
I'm a dreamer, but it's hard to sleep when your head's not in good. I've been restless, but you disappeared when something was left. These are all over my shoes. There's an angel, and it's shaped like you, and I thought I knew him. There's a window, and it's dark inside, but the light was in there. Please come breathe, love me, it hurts so much, I need to run. Oh, 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 I will survive and be the one who's stronger. I will not let you stay.
So, as you already know, the use of chemical weapons is illegal, and it is illegal since 1993 by the Chemical Weapons Convention. But some countries, like Syria, still find it a common thing, and in 2013 they released a deadly inert gas called sarin, and it causes the similar effects as the gases used in World War I. Victims cough, vomit, and suffer from huge muscle spasms, and they eventually die. We need to raise awareness that chemical weapons are illegal for a reason. Thanks for your attention.
Hello everybody, we are Catalina, Julia, Tina, also known as the Tina, and today we will talk about food during First World War and how happy we should be that we can eat almost everything whatever we want. We are going to start with a quote of one of the soldiers. He said, we are not doing bad here. We have made ourselves a nice soup. We sit at a table drinking coffee from nice porcelain cups and wine from nice glasses. Of course, we get prescribed amount of food, but we
Because of the mountainous areas the soldiers fought in, it was very difficult for them to get access to food. One of those mountains the soldiers fought in was the mountain of Kullen, which is shown on the PowerPoint. Families of the soldiers wanted to send food to the soldiers, but the government warned them to not give bad food such as raw meat, bread, and cream, since they could get rotten easily. The people in the towns actually had less food than the soldiers because of this. The soldiers spread many illnesses to the towns, and the average weight of the soldier was 49 kilograms. An example of one of those people is here on the picture.
In the First World War, the conditions and the food was very awful. At the beginning, though, they still got a bit of food. The reason was because they entered the war with a lot of supplies. Slowly on, they started to get when they started to get near the end of the war, there became less and less food. So they had to improvise. Some Austro-Hungarian soldiers, they started hunting rats and killing them and eating their flesh. Sometimes they even ate canned food, and they cut out parts of meat from the horses and ate it as well. For the British it was much easier, and the Italian as well. They could eat canned food with hard biscuits. They got around like 6 ounces.
As you heard, the food was extremely horrible at that time, and we should be grateful that nowadays we can prepare and eat almost anything we want. So we decided to make a peace cake that represents how lucky we are with all the ingredients we have. Because this cake is made out of ingredients that soldiers and other people didn't have in that day. It is made out of sugar, hazelnuts, eggs, lemons, and corn flour. So we can see that they didn't have like the most basic ingredients that nowadays we can get in like almost every store. And we use it on a day-to-day basis. So this is the cake we made, and we hope you will enjoy it afterwards, and thank you for listening.
this one needs a brand new freedom.
Welcome to Refugee Street. This is the journey in which every refugee experiences.
The journey will teach you about Slovenian refugees, but also about Belgian refugees and refugees that live nowadays.
We have collected information about refugees and we put them into footsteps, which form a path.
First, we talk about reasons why people had to flee. After that, we discuss some numbers. And we discuss how people go to other countries.
In the footsteps, there's also information about what it was like to live in those refugee camps. Then and now.
We also talk about the return and how long they had to stay in these camps and after how many years they could return to their own country. The quote we use is from Warwickshire.
So we are Tina, Tinet, Dylan, Iris, Maurice, and you.
For our project, we chose the topic of the war refugees.
We found out that there are still many refugees living nowadays.
And although the conditions in the camps and just the general attitude people have towards those refugees has improved since World War I, it's definitely not good enough.
If you want to find out more about this subject, you should walk the refugee street yourself after all the presentations, so you can experience the journey of a refugee yourself.
Thanks for listening.
Oh hey, Grandpa. These are my friends. Who did you bring?
This is my friend. We fought in the war together.
Can you tell us about some stories from the war?
Yes.
Can you tell me something about the war?
Well, yes, I do.
So, where were you battle?
Well, I fought at the Sons of Front, just about 60 kilometers away. There was like 90 kilometer, it was at the 90 kilometer front on the southwestern front in the war between Italy and Austria-Hungary.
and I fought in Belgium. Belgium is south of Holland and north of France. It was in the city of Passchendaele, which was a beautiful city before the Germans destroyed it.
So, on which side did you fight with and adjust who?
So I fought with the Austro-Hungarians against the Italians. I still remember the days when they were wearing red shorts and they charged up our mountains with like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah, and I fought with the French and the British against the Germans. We fought in Passchendaele, and it was a very impressive battle. The Germans were easy to recognize because they had these pikes on their helmets.
What type of weapons were used?
Your kids, your days and your Call of Duties and Battlefields, we didn't have those types of weapons that we have nowadays. We had these old bolt-action rifles and these still in development machine guns.
And well, at the Western Front, it was really different because we used a lot of gas. The area was very flat. You could see for miles, so the gas would easily travel over the flat area. We would also use artillery because it was easy to shoot. But at most, basically, we used bolt-action rifles and grenades.
How big was the front line?
Well, like I said before, it was approximately 90 kilometers. The sons of front, the whole front together was 640 kilometers.
Yes, and the Western Front was more than 750 kilometers long. It was one big trench. You could walk from west to east.
So, what was the terrain like?
Well, at the Western Front, the terrain was very flat. It was in Belgium, and as you can see, you could see for miles upon miles. And the ground was made of dirt and earth.
And was it the same at IJsselmeer?
No, not at all. What we had was just mountains and hills with very few flat valleys. We could barely find any flat valleys.
Okay, so how did the terrain influence the battles?
Well, because of the very soft earth, we could dig a lot of trenches. And these trenches we dug everywhere. But the artillery fire would almost immediately destroy the trenches again. It would also be a big problem when it would go rain, because all the trenches would turn into mud and it would eat off our feet. We would get trench foot and very different diseases.
Well, on our side, because we were the ones defending against the Italians, we fortified our positions at the tops of hills and mountains, so it was basically suicide for the Italians to charge up the hills and take our defenses. They succeeded sometimes, but I still think that's the only reason they didn't completely break our defense in the first month of the battle.
And what happened to the war, to the land because of the war?
Well, I think you can imagine what constant artillery strikes and grenades do to the environment.
What were the circumstances due to the lack or the excess of water?
Well, here in Belgium we had far too much water. It rained and it turned all the ground into mud. Our morale was very low. You can see everywhere were holes filled with water. Our morale was very low. We were all very unhappy, and diseases spread everywhere.
Yeah, we only had a problem with the water in the summer. In the winter there was so much snow you could just melt it and get fresh drinking water. But in the summer the supply of fresh water was so low that it severely crippled our morale, and not to mention our health.
So how many people died or got injured during the battles?
Well, a lot of people died. Only at the Battle of at the Battle of Passchendaele, 500,000 people died. But in the whole war, over 13 million casualties were made of some who were my friends.
Yeah, that front, half the all deaths on the southwestern front happened at the Sons of Battles. In the whole war claimed millions of lives. Some estimates ranging from 9 million to 25 million, so there's no real answer there, but it's just a no-brainer that it claimed a lot of lives.
Grandchildren, dinner's ready.
I think that's grandmother. We should eat.
So we are the drama and music group, and today we will present to you one poem that we've made of different poems. And we are going to do this on music from Veronica. She plays the flute, and Bjarne, he plays the guitar. And we really hope that you will enjoy it.
So tell me, where shall I go? To the left, where nothing is right, or to the right, where nothing is left?
I like to think of you as brown and tall, and strong and living as you used to be. Because they tell me, dear, that you are dead, and that I can no longer see your face. I hear you laughing as you used to do, yet loving all the things, I think of you.
She was powerful, not because she wasn't scared, but because she went on so strongly despite the fear.
Tears are dripping, slipping one by one. Your son is shot and hit his small brother. The mimic battles ended with a sob, while you dream over your sin.
The sun turns north, the days grow long. Later, the evening star grows bright. How can the day let linger on? For men to fight, still fight.
She needed a hero, so that's what she became.
When tomorrow comes, I'll be on my own, feeling frightened of the things that I don't know. When tomorrow comes, when tomorrow comes, when tomorrow comes. And though the road is long, I look up to the sky, and in the dark I found lost hope that I will fly. And I sing along, and I sing along, and I sing